which is essentially what the scientific method is, a problem-solving method by which we arrive at decisions rather than making them. So what's the difference between arriving at a decision and making one? Take a plot of land. 4 families live on the plot of land and they decide to plant a fruit tree for food. Which place is the best place for them to plant the fruit tree? A, B, C, or D? Now, B is the one screaming out at you, right? But in this figurative example, at least, it's actually D. You see, the scientific method states that you have to take into account all the known variables interacting on the tree's ability to produce the highest amount of food. So that's the pH level of the soil, the best place for irrigation, sunlight, and so on. So by using such a different decision-making process towards planetary management, we'll naturally arrive at an extremely different perspective in social design than the one we have now. But it's not like it would be the first time we've had to update our understandings as a species, for fight change as we may, it is in fact the only constant. Remember that we once thought the world was flat, the centre of the universe, that drilling holes in heads would relieve migraines, slavery was fine, and the Roman Empire would last forever. Needless to say that our understandings of what the truth is has had to change over time, and there's no reason to think that this trend has suddenly stopped. So with this new decision-making process in play, let's run through a thought exercise to learn the basics of how a resource-based economy, or RBE, works. Imagine that we discover a new Earth identical to our planet but untouched by humans, and we can move all the humans from this planet to our new Earth. Where would we start in an effort to build our new society? Well, wouldn't it make sense first to discover what we have on board our planetary spaceship by doing a resource survey? So this can be done now with existing technologies such as satellites and sensors and so on. This would take into account all relevant factors pertaining towards optimal global resource management, but let's take the lifeblood of society as an example of this approach: energy. We would survey where and what the energy potentials are and plot them into a chart listing all the relative retroactions and potentials of those mediums, such as output, renewability, pollution, and alike, and then draw inference as to the most efficient and strategic approach to meet our energy needs. This would be based on our most up-to-date understanding and technological approaches at the time, of course. And this is where the news is very good, because we have nothing but an abundance of clean energy right at our fingertips. A 2005 Stanford University study found that by harnessing just 20% of the potential of wind energy, we could supply half of all the world's current energy needs. With the potential exponential increase in nanotechnology when applied to the harnessing of solar radiation, it's estimated that this medium alone could supply the Earth with all its energy needs 1,000 times over in the not too distant future, which isn't really that surprising considering that the energy from the sun's rays hitting the surface of the Earth is 10,000 times our energy use. Tidal has been estimated to supply 34% of the UK's energy demand, for example, and wave power could supply 50% of all the world's energy needs if applied strategically. And then there's geothermal energy, which has been estimated to contain enough energy potential to power the world for the next 4,000 years if applied with this systems theory approach to planetary management. So now we have an abundance of clean, renewable energy. Next, we need a system to manage and distribute this energy. The most effective tools we have for this job are computers and artificial intelligence. Computers can process trillions of bits of information a second and help us to arrive at more appropriate decisions in our economic operations. We would, of course, look to localize energy production based on proximity to the surrounding potentials, with redundancy protocols built in at every stage of development. So if there's a drop of supply in one energy medium, then another can pick up the slack automatically. There's no need to vote for it, it's self-evident and would react in much the same way your body's nervous system does. Whilst this may have some complex variables, it's really nothing more than a glorified calculator. This example given with energy would serve as a proxy for the method we would use in all other areas of the economy. In fact, this approach is already used, albeit in often unappreciated and detached ways, such as restocking at shopping centres, the ink level notifications on your personal printer, and the thermostat in your fridge. All we are doing is scaling this practice out to make sure that we are maintaining maximum efficiency and a balanced load economy. So let's run down a brief list of some other essentials that need to be met for human society on our new planet Earth. Food, water, housing, transportation, general safety, and education and culture. When using a scientific method applied to agriculture, we find that our current methods of food cultivation are environmentally destructive, outdated, and very often detrimental to human health. By the use of hydroponics and aquaponics, we can produce an abundance of fresh, organic food for everyone and are able to do so locally with a negligible effect on the environment. Hydroponics is the growing of plants in organically nutrient-rich water, which uses 1/10 that of modern agricultural methods. And when grown in rotating cylinders like this, we're able to use less light and can use gravity to trick the plants into growing up to 5 times faster than current farming methods. Aquaponics combines the cultivation of aquatic animals in tanks with hydroponics in a symbiotic system. So wastewater is filtered out from the aquatic tanks to the hydroponic system, where the plants then filter out the vital nutrients needed and return the clean water back to the aquatic tanks. What I've just described is a symbiotic system of design, otherwise known as joined-up thinking, something sadly lacking in our current system, I'm afraid. And if this was housed in a building with 1 acre floor space, 12 stories high, then completely automated with the use of AI and robotics, it could produce as much agricultural yield as 400 acres of farming land, and with a faster crop rotation time as well. So when it comes to food cultivation, we really do need to grow up. Sorry. Thank you. I've got one more. The fact that we're facing water shortage issues in the coming years on a planet 71% covered in the stuff should tell enough of its own story as to how ridiculously moronic our current practices are. But are there more effective ways of producing clean drinking water? Yes, there are a few, but the most popular one is desalination, which removes excess salt and other minerals from polluted or seawater to make fresh drinking water. There's also a new device called an atmospheric water generator that can actually produce fresh drinking water from extracting it from the moisture in the air around you. Around half of all non-renewable resources used on this planet go to construction. And in the UK, for example, 40% of that goes to waste. Fortunately, robust design and delivery of buildings is now a reality through advents such as 3D printing and mechanization. Here are some designs from the Venus Project of homes that are built with sustainable practice in mind from the outset. Energy conservation is built in at the design stage, utilizing such technologies as photovoltaic paints to pull in solar radiation, the thermocouple effect to regulate temperature, and the thermosiphon effect to keep that temperature distributed evenly throughout the building. Dome shapes are utilized to reduce resource use and provide better protection from the elements. Homes are designed to meet the needs of the occupants rather than hobbled together as you go along. This is what true sustainable design looks like. Our traditional aesthetic notions of what a home should look like are simply not relevant when aiming to live a life in tandem with the surrounding environment. And as for the situation of our homes, this would be up to the individual, of course, but in order to achieve maximum sustainability, efficiency, and localization of operations, then the circular arrangement is the most equidistant and optimal for a community to adopt. The city is divided into different belts relative to functional necessity. There are recreational, energy and agricultural belts, temporary and permanent dwelling areas, and as we move into the center of the city, there are schools, research facilities, art, music, exhibition and conference centers, childcare, distribution centers, and a hospital. All functional aspects of the city, from food cultivation to sewage systems, are run by a combination of autonomic sensors and a computerized management system in order to maintain peak efficiency. The design is split into eights for several reasons, but one of them is so that no matter what belt you are in, you're never further away from receiving medical care than if you were in that same belt in any other section. Whereas in our system, if there's an ambulance trying to get to someone dying of a heart attack in a traffic jam, then rich or poor, I'm afraid they both stand the same chance of death. Your bank balance won't mean much to you then, I'm afraid. Inside the city, transport would be by monorail, except for emergency vehicles. And if necessary, cars could be booked out and returned when you finished using them. We can now build electric cars that can drive themselves, do not crash into each other, and go at speeds of up to 100 miles an hour for 200 miles with no need for recharging. But the patents for this battery technology are withheld by the automotive industry to maintain market share. Long distance travel would be by maglev trains. These trains are suspended on a rail by magnetism to reduce friction, and if housed in an airtight tube, they can go at speeds of up to 4,000 miles an hour safely. They are clean and use 2% the energy of planes. A health system that works to prevent rather than cure will be the main gravitas of an RBE. But what about safety from harm and crime? Well, what is most crime generated by? In a word, scarcity. If we can create an access abundance and a more equal, egalitarian society, then studies show that we can get rid of most crime in the long run. Living arrangements and production methods would be designed in such a way so that you would not have to bear the burden of owning things. You can if you want, and in some cases it will be entirely necessary, such as underwear. But largely, it would probably be the equivalent of hoarding shopping trolleys. The question is of utility. It's not communism, it's common sense. Ownership is an outgrowth of scarcity, and this value system that proclaims that everyone should own one of everything is childish, grossly inefficient, wasteful, and will ultimately result in ecological suicide. With nothing to own, there's nothing to steal, and no vanity can be attached to having status symbols via ownership when everyone could just get one for themselves if they really wanted to, thus decreasing the propensity for envy, shame, and ultimately violence. This, of course, brings up the human nature question. I don't want to spend too long on this topic as it's very well covered in modern scientific literature and in the first section of the film Zeitgeist Moving Forward. But if our nature shows one thing, it's that we're not particularly constricted by it. We make all sorts of different living arrangements and showcasing our great ability to adapt to changing circumstances. So human behavior cannot and should not be judged out the context of environmental influence. There's long been an argument of nature versus nurture going on for a long time now, and only recently has it been found that it's in fact nature via nurture, not versus. Genes are not independent initiators of commands. They must be triggered by the environment to come into effect. Education is of the utmost importance in an RBE. The smarter our kids are, the richer we will all be. You'll be taught to stand on your own 2 feet, and if you want to change something in this society, then you're going to have to work for it via learning and proving that your idea works, and not just getting your own way because you have more shiny gold coins than someone else. We would raise our children to go beyond and surpass our prior societal constructs and cultural limitations. They'll be taught to understand that anything they contribute to society will be of both benefit to them and the rest of their fellow human family. Social interest must become personal interest if we wish to survive and prosper as a species on this planet. So rather than educating towards specialization for a slot in the job market of an increasingly obsolete system, we would instead emphasize a generalist point of view to promote a more comprehensive thinking pattern, whilst encouraging people's intrinsic motivations and interests to flourish. Numerous studies now show that our current methods of grades, praise, and punishment are actually detrimental towards creating intrinsic motivation, which is the origin of true creative potential problem solving and positive social skills. Human beings are biopsychosocial organisms that need more than just the basics to survive. So we must encourage our children to develop meaningful social values, positive relationships, and encourage collaboration if we would like them to grow up in a more peaceful and sustainable world.